Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Two Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today you're getting our final review of Franckensteina Strataemontanus from Carach Angren. So we spent the entire week listening to this album as much as we possibly could, and I'm gonna hand the floor to TV Fish to tell us what he thinks about it.
Alright guys, I'm just gonna say about Carach Angren, this band does not make bad music. And this album is an example of that. Fuck. This album just wowed me throughout the entire week. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And in our first impressions, it didn't blow us away. We liked it, but it didn't really like slam us. But at least in my case, it took a few listens. It only took a few days, I guess, for it to really start hitting me that this album was something special. And I figured out why I felt that this album sounded so different from the last album. And the main is because I listened to Dance and Laugh Amongst the Rotten again, bounced around between the tracks just to say, okay, what is so different, right? And the main thing is what they did with the mix. In Dance and Laugh Amongst the Rotten, that album had the guitars at the front of the mix. If you listen to that album, you'll hear all the riffs are there, and they're really in your face, and they're great, fantastic album, but that's what you hear. On this album, the guitars are more so in the middle of the mix. They're not really at the forefront, they kind of blend in with the symphonic elements of the music so that they don't sound as pronounced, they don't sound as in your face. The riffs are still there, however. You know, the deep guitar riffs, the crazy stuff is there, it's just not as in your face as it was on the last album. So that's a big separator between the albums, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying I kind of figured out why I felt that way. So, I actually wrote some notes myself as to what songs I really wanted to mention as to why I love this album. As an overview, the riffs are sick and there's so much depth to this album, as there is for all of Carach Angren's music. But here's a good example. In track number 2, Scourge School Undead, at 3 minutes and 19 seconds, maybe I'm crazy, but there are so many weird background sounds I'm hearing in the two different channels. Like in the right channel, I'm hearing this like high-pitched frequency, not super high-pitched, but it's there. It's very subtle, but I can kind of hear it only in that little section. And closer to the left side, I hear this weird crunchy sound, and I noted it sounded like, if you've listened to Blood Mountain by Mastodon, and you've listened to Circle of Sisquatch, in like the bridge of that song, there's this like crunchy vocal effect. It reminded me of that. So if you know that song, if you know that sound, that's what you can kind of look for to kind of hear what I'm talking about. But those two things, those two sounds are the most subtle things. It's not any symphonic things, it's not any of the band, it's just these sound effects that they have, and there's so many layers to everything that,
Lots of layers.
Those are the kind of things that you point out and go, what was that thing, right? I think this song is a really good example of how great the lyricism is on this album. The story told in this song, honestly, to me, is one of the most brutal, probably the most brutal on the album, or up there, from what I've noticed at least.
What's it about?
The general story is that, and this, kind of comes from the intro track as well, Whatever Bleeds, and it has the narration, which you don't really hear from this band, narration like that. Like,
not so much.
I don't think that was Saragor's voice. That was probably someone else.
Probably a guest.
Anyway, the story generally is, this family, they lost their son, he died, whatever, buried into the ground. I don't know if he was reanimated by the doctor or whatever, but he comes back pretty much as a zombie and comes back to their home, and his mother's there, like, oh my god, my son, what's going on? And he comes in her embrace and eats her alive. And it's just the way that Saragor is singing it, it's just like, oh my god, it's so tragic, so brutal, mean, and evil. That's what this band's about with their storytelling, that's totally what it is. Honestly, Saragor's lyricism is just so impressive that he can paint such pictures with his words. And then, Ardek writes, more of the music, and then you put it together and you just get something magical out of it.
Yeah. So I would expand on that as well and say Saragor's voice on this album is probably the best vocal performance he's done. Like, he sounds evil as fuck on this album. Like,
certainly a lot darker than a lot of his other performances.
Very dark, yeah. And like, this guy's an evil sounding motherfucker no matter what. Like, but this album, he's deeper, he's meaner, it's just more guttural. I really, really liked his vocal performance on this album.
Yeah, and another good example of that for me was in Operation Compass. During the waltz section, which I thought was awesome. I love that waltz section in the middle of the song. When he says, "and black oil erupting like a fountain from hell," gets me every single time. Just listen to his voice. It's so raw sounding.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, I love it. And another cool thing about that song that I love is the use of the low brass in that song. Now this song, the story of this song is more so based on, you know, this was some battle in World War II. British army comes and pretty much just decimates anyone in this Egyptian forest, or not forest, desert, sorry. And and what happens is they want oil, and what happens, the oil, I guess, spouts up, there's a face that appears, and then all the corpses become reanimated and kill the soldiers. Now, the low brass is only used when Saragor is speaking from the perspective of the soldiers. In a way, the low brass is the leitmotif of the character. So the fact that they're really putting that much depth into creating a world, creating motives for the characters in what is like a 6-minute song,
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff you see in entire symphonies and entire operatic compositions that's condensed into 6 minutes.
And that
That's
feeds
so
into
impressive.
the storytelling too.
It does.
It definitely does that.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well that's a lot of impressive stuff. For me, I wanna first agree with the very first point you made, is that Carach Angren does not make bad music. But for this album, I feel like this might be their weakest work. I'm a fan of this band. I like all their stuff, and I found myself not struggling to enjoy it, but struggling to be impressed. This is the kind of band normally I'll put an album on, and it might take me 1 listen or 2 listens before I'm like really loving songs. I don't think there's any song on this album that really jumped out at me and I love it. Like there's maybe 1 or 2 that I might throw on my playlist, but the rest of the album as a whole was just not hitting the right chord for me. But there are certain elements of the album that stood out to me and I was really, really liking them, like Saragor's voice, like I mentioned a few minutes ago. But there's other few things, like a couple tracks that did stand out was the Necromancer, which is really, really cool. And the thing I love about that the most is that low brass section that they have. It's like low tubas or baritones or trombones or whatever they are, maybe a combination of all of them. Really low, mean sounding, gives it a very orchestral, evil sound to it. The title track has another really cool song. The vocals on that song are just mean and dirty. There's a lot of very crunchy grooves on this album, and I can really get behind that. But I found a lot of the songs were kind of just there and didn't really do too much to really grab my attention. Der Vampire von Nuremberg was another song that stood out to me because I really liked when he was yelling the lyrics Morgrat. Morgrat's cool, and he says it 3 times, then he yells it in German,
Which is sick.
like in Rate. And then the second time he does it twice in English, once in German, then once more in English. So he switches up the pattern a little bit on the second phrasing he does it, which is pretty cool. I like that creativity. But these songs just weren't grabbing me. They weren't like, I keep saying they weren't grabbing me. I don't know how else to put it. Like Dance and Laugh Amongst the Rotten, that album had songs that really grabbed me. They grabbed my attention. I was like, shit, this is awesome. I could really crank this up and groove to it. Playlist. You know what I mean? This Is No Fairy Tale has songs like that. Corpses, Lamendam, Death Came Through a Phantom Trip, whatever that album's called. These albums, in my opinion, are solid from beginning to end. This one, first track, last track, could do without them. Okay, the interlude and the last track, I could do without those tracks. So that right there is 2 off the list that I wasn't really feeling at all.
Well, about the last track, I honestly think it's an interesting closer to have the way they composed that song, because it's a song or whatever, and then you just have them kind of jam it out at the end, and it just kind of flies away, if that makes sense.
It is what it is, but I don't like it. It wasn't for me. It wasn't something that I was having trouble getting behind it. I understand what they were doing, and I understand as a closer, it seems pretty cool for the album and all that stuff. But listening to it as a track, on its own, like it's never a song I'd ever want to put on and listen to. And I don't feel like that's a weak link on the album for me, even though it's at the very end. So I don't know. I do like the album. I really did enjoy it, but as far as love it and as far as being impressed like I have been with past Carach Angren work, it wasn't quite hitting those marks for me.
Well, interesting. I guess it would be a good time now to rate the album. So Vile, what do you rate this album?
I think this is a great effort from the band. I think that fans of the band will definitely love this album. And this might just be my own personal issues, but I really struggle to give this album a toe tag, so it's not going to get a toe tag for me, unfortunately. I really wanted to, and I feel like I'm having a repeat of Become the Hunter by Suicide Silence, because I had similar feelings with that album, where I wanted to love it a lot, but just for some reason didn't. So this is going to get a 7.5 for me. It's really good, but it just lacked this specialness. That's not a word. It lacked something special that it would need for me to say, yes, this is a toe tag album.
Well, in my case, I did find something special in this album, and I honestly felt that it really painted a perfect picture of something eerie and just completely disgusting in a good way. And I think it's something different for the band, but it's also something that I think any fan of the band can still generally enjoy. You know, you had your hang-ups upon it, but you still gave it a 7.5. This album gets my toe tags. I just loved it throughout the entire week. A bit heartbreaking to see that it did not get 2 toe tags. I'm kind of surprised, to be honest. I was expecting you to enjoy this album as much as I did.
I was expecting to as well, but throughout the week trying to figure out if I was going to give it a toe tag or not, in my head, I couldn't justify it. And every song felt like, this is bad to say, it almost feels like a B-side album for Carach Angren. Like, it almost feels like these are B-side tracks. Like, these guys can make better music. And it almost feels like on these tracks, they tried a little too hard and it didn't pay off. Maybe they tried a little bit too hard to be a little bit too different or a little bit too experimental in certain ways, and it's good when bands sound different and stuff like that, but it didn't pay off for me. For me, it didn't strike the right chords, and that's probably a thing, I don't know, but I like all their other albums a lot more than this one, and found that I enjoyed all those albums a lot more than this one. So what can I say? I mean, that's it. Anyways, guys, that's it for this video. That's a 7.5 for me and a toe tag from TV Fish. So leave a comment below and let us know whose score you agree with, or if you have your own opinion, let us know down below. But that's it for this video. So like it if you liked it, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, and make sure you guys are coming back each and every day to vote on our poll for the best metal band in the world tournament. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
We'll see you guys on the next video. Keep those heads banging.